Well, hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Just Us with Khutso
and Emily,
where we unite the world by talking about everyday issues in a way
that challenges mainstream thinking.
Yeah, well, that's our passion. That's what we believe in, anyways, right? Emily, you've got a serious cold today, huh?
Right out. I thought I could just briefly get away with my deep, sexy voice, but I guess not.
Well, there's no way to masquerade that. That's just called a cold.
That's what makes
nothing COVID, everybody. But
it's not COVID. I'm in a COVID-free world, so it's not COVID.
It's not COVID. All right. So what were we going to talk about? Well, welcome to whomever is there. I don't think anyone is live right now, but I'm sure people will be popping in and out, or so we hope. And for those of you who are going to be watching our video later, thank you for taking the time. We hope it'll be worth your time, the minute that you spent on it. So Emily, let's take it away. Identity. Hey, we said today we're going to be thinking and talking about identity, which is very important to every single human being. It's a normal sociological, you think, need, right, for us to identify in one way or the other. But while that, I take it, while that is a given that everybody identifies themselves in one way or the other, I know that I find it a little bit stifling, the way in which mainstream society defines identity, the way you're supposed to tick a box, either along the lines of race or along the lines of religion or even by nationality, because, you can't just go live wherever you want. And this is really complicated for people like us who identify ourselves in a really, where we don't quite put ourselves in boxes. The world may put us in boxes, but we most certainly don't feel like we necessarily belong anywhere. We just live, we're just citizens of the world. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think we've had some discussion around these boxes that are created, and they are quite different depending on the country you're in. And which highlights again how the concept of race is in fact a subjective and completely non-scientific, and in fact doesn't even exist.
Totally bogus. What's your melanin level got to do with it?
And an archaic way of looking at ourselves. In fact, on most boxes, I usually tick other as far as my identity. But I was thinking about how coincidental it is that we've brought this topic as our second episode, and about just this podcast / vlog in general, where we are in the world today. There's been a lot of debate, and in fact, in some cases, very violent opinions around this topic, which makes it, of course, again, a touchy topic to talk about. But that's not the purpose of us in this discussion. It's about looking at it through a different lens. And I think one really important component of today's discussion is around the current presidential elections in the U.S. and Kamala Harris and her representing several different cultures.
Yeah.
And media seems to want to box her in either an Asian or a Black culture context, when in fact she's multicultural. And I'm sure she identifies herself. Her parents came from two different countries and immigrated to the States. And there's so many people who fall in that category. But in her particular context, because she's a political figure, has to identify with one or the other. And I hope that she moves towards trying to unite us and looking at our identity as something that's doesn't need to be boxed, that unifies us in a way. So I think that's where we're kind of, our perspective heads in regards to our own identity.
Yeah. Well, I know for a fact, for one, I believe in totally deracializing society. I think we should just get rid of this whole notion of race to begin with. I understand that, given history, and I grew up under apartheid in South Africa. So, and I went and lived around the world for a very long time. As you know, between the two of us, Emily, we've well lived in over 20 countries, right? So, we've really been around the block. But what was I going to say? I really feel very strongly that we ought to get rid of this whole notion of race to begin with, among others, let alone nationality. Because of course it's chaos on all sorts of fronts, a person would argue. But I think the way we're going about promoting egalitarian societies, I think it worked. It has a place in time, but I also feel like we've really hit a glass ceiling in a way. I feel like we're going around in circles, and this is what I mean by that. It's still very important for even the progressive movement, and I've considered myself progressive all my life. People who are pro equality and all of that, we all mean well, but I feel like we perpetuate the exact problem we think we're trying to fight by even still thinking of ourselves in racial terms. Yeah. Things around, let's think about Barack Obama or affirmative action. I mean, these are all progressive, what is it called? Moves, if you like, or what are not activities? I can't think of the word. Policy initiatives. Initiative is the word I was looking for. But the fact that a person feels that a person looks at your skin color and decides that dictates what how you ought to be treated. And I don't mean in a negative way. I mean even in a positive way. I was very offended the other day. A client of mine told me, well, I hired you because you have brown skin. And I thought, no, then I don't want your business. You
want to be hired because of your intelligence, because of your quality, because of who you are presenting before this person. Yeah.
Exactly, because I don't wake up every morning and look at myself and think, I mean, sure, I'm a brown-skinned woman, but then I also have braids and I also have white teeth and I have, and I love every aspect of me. I really do appreciate the body that I came in, every piece of it, including my skin. But I don't think the fact that my skin ought to dictate in any way either that I'm less than, and therefore in order to reach some level of equity, I deserve some special treatment. I really don't believe that. Or anything other traditionally wrong. Of course, we know that, you're brown skin, therefore you don't deserve anything. To me, they're equally, I wish we didn't have that, because I just think it's just perpetuating the fact that you even recognize the notion of race. I think, to me, you're giving it fuel on some level. I think we should just all consider ourselves as humans. Right. I consider myself as human. People tell you, you're a certain skin color. So what? To me, it's so what? It never occurs to me that being a certain skin color means you're less than. If that's what people think, guess what? It's their problem. What do you think?
It's so funny because my youngest daughter, who's 3, she says the other day, "Oh, mommy, I'm going to go do this thing like a doggy, but I'm still a human." And still, I just always smile because she always associates herself against other animals. So she's like, "But mommy, I'm still a human. I'm not a dog. I want to grow up and I want to be a bear, but I'm a human right now." I just love that perspective. It's really just pulling together the world and not all the creatures on it. But it's one of the topics that you brought up around, getting rid of nationality in a sense. And that's another loaded topic in itself, coming to the context of Africa, because of course that's how Africa originated, was without borders. So that's a whole nother topic for us to be able to pull up and have a discussion around, about that lack of nationality, which I know really pertains to my own growing up and childhood. When I was 1, we moved to Africa. And from there on, we moved across countries, across borders, and spent most of my life growing up in Africa, in East and West Africa. And so for me, I exactly had that. The reality, the norm for me was there were no borders, that we all belonged to different countries, and that we engaged with different people of different cultures. You know, my high school was in Uganda, was made up of people from every different country. And so you couldn't have the opportunity to put yourself in a box, because we were all individuals coming together. And I think the real shock for me was coming back to an environment where I was expected to belong to a particular group of people, or I was identified as part of a particular group of people. And I think for the longest time, you know, emotionally struggled with that, until I gained that confidence to realize that it didn't matter. And that then the perspective that we have is not a wrong perspective. In fact, it's something that should be embraced more widely.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can totally relate to that, Emily, because you know, my story is slightly different, but I, at a very impressionable age, landed in an international school. You know, I grew up under apartheid, but up until when the time I hit high school, everybody I knew and came in contact with was brown skinned like me, and spoke, you know, the language that's spoken around here, my native language. And then, you know, long story cut short, I found myself, I was very lucky, got a scholarship. I went to this international school. And that was exactly, you know, I had a similar experience to you. You know, you have people from 50 different countries, and you don't have these boxes, you know, you're just a human, you know? And that's just kind of what I miss about the world, about our societies, because then we raise our kids in societies that may be diverse, but the perspectives are still very, you know, we're very, very defined by definitions, boxes. You know, you ought to belong to this, or you ought to belong to that. And if you feel anything like us, where these boxes bother you, like you said, it really takes a lot of self-confidence to realize that, hey, you know, I don't have to belong to any of these boxes. And if I'm considered to be different, different is good. Yeah, this is another piece that really ruffles my feathers. The notion that we build our paradigms around commonalities, at the exclusion of differences. I mean, I think that the tenet of our paradigms ought to be, let's just celebrate difference. Let's be excited by difference, rather than, okay, let's just find something we can recognize. Well, there's a lot that's different about us, and that's beautiful. That's what life is about. I love being different. I love being the only one off in a whole country. You know, and I lived that. You know, I told you the other day, when I was living in Thailand, most people, it was in rural Thailand, most people had never seen a brown skinned person before. It didn't bother me one bit. In fact, I believe I got called a monkey. It didn't bother me one bit, because I understood, to me, the fact that people had never seen people like me was just educating to them. By contrast, I've had conversations with other brown skinned people in South Africa who said, "Oh my God, I'll never move to Asia. I went and visited, and everybody looked at me like I was something." Well, and then they took it. "Oh my God, and people are so racist over there." Well, I don't know that you necessarily want to jump to those sort of extreme conclusions. There is a thing called people are just curious. And if you're really comfortable in your skin and who you are, know, you know, things like that don't matter. People are always gonna think what people are gonna think, y'all. It doesn't matter whether, you know, you bleached your skin or you darken it. People are gonna have opinions of you whether you like it or not. So they might as well feel free.
You know,
I think we're too quick to get offended. I really think we're too quick to get offended. Sorry, Emily, you were saying.
Oh, I just, experience when I was in Papua New Guinea, in a very rural village, the the exposure to white skin, very minimal. Some of the children had never seen it. So of course you're a novelty. And even in Asia, my youngest was a baby at the time, and she has bright blue eyes and blonde hair, really pudgy, fat face and white skin. And she became, forget the temples in Thailand, she became the highlight of the.
She was like the new Buddha or
She was the
something.
new Buddha. In fact, I think they called her that. They called her a bear and all sorts of funny names, which again, I didn't take offense to, because she was something novel and something interesting. And I felt like, again, it's embracing all our different, highlighting, look, where there's different people around the world and we all look different, but we're the same. We're all people. We're all humans. And I think we talked about how, again, growing up in Africa, it was normal that I was probably the only white-skinned person in a market or in a room or in
as far as you can see, right?
And it never crossed my mind once. When I was standing there looking at someone else, I don't sit there and think, oh wow, it doesn't. You just all of a sudden we become one, and I just don't understand why we don't embrace that and try and teach that and let that be the way that we see the world. And I think it's time that we
see
are a global society. Even in rural areas in the world, we have had exposure. So it's time to acknowledge we are a global
society.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't, truly, I don't mean to underappreciate people's efforts in getting us to where we are in terms of societal equality. Not at all. I think there was a time and place for that, but I think if we're going to move beyond that struggle, I think that struggle has kind of reached saturation point now. I feel like we're not moving past it. And I think what needs to happen really is a mindset shift, instead of now ourselves and teaching our kids, listen, because you have this color of skin, expect the world is going to treat you this way. Just drop that conversation. A child is not going to have a paradigm, unless, they can develop it later in life, but what's the point in you telling them, listen, your skin color predetermines how you're going to be treated by the world? I don't believe that. And I have biracial, so-called biracial, multicultural kids. I've had somebody challenging me the other day saying, well, your kids are going to have a tough life, because, they're like, they have black, they have white. I'm like, dude, stay out of my kids, because my kids are human. They are human. There's absolutely nothing to put them in a box for. And if you don't teach them to expect that, trust me, they won't see it. And I know that because for 20 odd years, when I was living around the world, being the only one of my skin color, it never bothered me. My skin color is just like my hair. What's the fucking big deal? Excuse my language.
Go, girl.
Obviously, I'm feeling very passionate about
this. This is your moment. Your moment to get into it.
We just need to get over it, y'all. It's time to ditch
of my sickness to not be charging ahead.
No, you're the sane one, Emily. You've always been sane. Yes, Hannah, right? You're right. Hannah is chiming in.
That's right. We won't go into the details of my life.
I'm sorry, Emily. I was just acknowledging Hannah. She is making a point. She agrees with us. She says people are brainwashing their children. And that's it. I totally agree with you, Hannah. I think that's what it is. And now if we're going to be we keep going like that, we teach it to our children, how are we ever going to get past it? How are we ever going to get past this? It's like passing it on from generation to generation. And we think we're fighting against it by recreating it.
Yeah, I think.
So anyway.
No, I agree with you. I think that our next topic is really around that next generation and our children and how to raise them. And I know, having multicultural children of two nationalities, that I really, it's an intentional effort on my part to ensure that they know that they are of two nationalities and that they embrace those nationalities. In fact, go beyond that, embrace the world. And that's why I
embrace the world. Home is world. Home is not, this little piece of land, really. And all of us can fit. The world is big enough for all of us. Yeah. No, well said, Emily. And you know what? We got a minute to go.
And we just got started. We just got started.
I know, we just started to warm up. I'm starting to feel hot, in my usual way. When I get very excited, it's like, woo, just like sweat everywhere. Anyway, no, but that was a great segue. Emily's right. That's exactly what we're hoping to talk about next week, because we've got endless stories to share, and we want to hear your endless stories too. About this whole notion of how you raise global kids, because it's really interesting.
And I do think that it would be. I'm looking forward to our guests that come in and give us their perspective, because I know we have a lot of folks out there who are sitting in the same place we are, but have perhaps different experiences.
Yes.
So I think it would be nice to hear from someone who has grown up multiracial. We've grown up as global citizens, and I think that will really bring in another element to that conversation. There's so many. I mean, everybody has a different element to this conversation. It's a fascinating one, but I think we can bring it together to unify us.
Yeah,
as you said,
in a new way.
Right?
Like we say, our show is to try to really challenge the most progressive we've been. We just feel like, yes, the progressive movement is great. Bless them. Bless every single one of them that came before us. But it's now time to move it further. And so we're hoping. I'm sorry, Emily?
This what our generation needs to ignite, I think. Stop sitting on the back burner and riding the old train.
Rhetoric. Yeah, it's circular rhetoric.
Bullet train, man. Let's get a bullet train and start moving forward faster.
Exactly. That's silly. Let's just go. Yeah. Well, you know what? We're actually a minute 2 over. So, guys, thank you, Hannah. I know you're listening in. Thank you for chiming in. There's somebody else who's also there. I'm not sure who they are, because from where I'm sitting, I can't see them. I don't, but we do thank you for joining us, guys. We like to hear the sound of our own voices, and we really want you to chime in next time.
Yes,
Hannah, you did. So thank you, Hannah. Yeah.
Bye.
Well, Hannah, you're my friend too, even though I don't know you. If you're Emily's friend, you're my friend too.
We're all friends here.
We're all friends here. It's a small world. All right, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye-bye. Same time, same place it is, right? Okay. Bye.
Bye.